Hey, welcome back to the videos. In the previous video we finished looking at basically playing all the notes chromatically on each string so that we could locate and identify each of the 12 notes on each one of the 5 strings of the banjo, which wasn't that much of a complicated task once you understand basically how the notes function on the fingerboard. And remember that all the notes, if you go from one note to the next directly without skipping any notes, you're going chromatically through all 12 notes. And it doesn't matter which string you start on, as long as you have a starting note, as we did in the previous videos. You can play in any order on the fingerboard, and you can go chromatically or 1/2 step at a time. Now, since we're talking about the notes in order, what if we were to skip some of the notes and go in a different order? What if we were to skip over, let's say, the sharps, the flats, the sharps and the flats, the in-between notes, those inharmonic equivalent notes, which we know is just a fancy term for the in-between notes. So we know we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it starts over again as being our what I call the major notes. And then we have the in-between sharps and flats, which we know now are the same notes. They're just called sharp or flat depending on the direction you're going or the key you're playing in, which is something we haven't discussed yet. But what if we wanted to move differently on the fingerboard? What if we wanted to do, I don't know, what if we wanted to go 2 frets at a time? Okay, musically speaking, there's only 2 ways to really express how far you've moved when you're talking about the grand set of notes. You've either gone a 1/2 step, which we know is chromatically, or you go whole steps, which is 2 frets at a time. So if I started with the 4th string open, that's D, and I go a whole step, that would be 2 frets on your banjo. So skipping a note each time means going a whole step. Going from one note directly to the following note without getting out of order is a 1/2 step. So each fret on your banjo is a 1/2 step, but every 2 frets you go is a whole step, which is important to realize when you're trying to figure out how you're moving around through the notes on the fingerboard. So let's go in whole steps starting with the 4th string and see what happens. So I know from 0, which is open, 2 frets would be the same as a whole step. So I'd have to skip over that sharp note. I'd go D, skip over D sharp, and go to E. D to E is a whole step. Okay, let's continue with that. Let's go whole steps. From E, a whole step would mean I'd skip over F, because E and F are always together. That would give me F sharp. D to E is a whole. E to F sharp is a whole. Now let's keep going whole steps just to see what happens. F sharp, 2 frets higher, would be a whole step. That means I'm skipping over that G and going to G sharp. D, E, F sharp, G sharp. Now if I go another 2 frets, that means I've skipped over my, hey, that was my A note. G sharp, A sharp. G sharp, A sharp is a whole step. Now if I skip over that, I have A sharp, I'm skipping over B and going to C. So listen to what happens. I have D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, C. It's kind of odd, and it sounds totally different than a chromatic set of notes. Not so greasy sounding. Okay, so C was our last note. Let's continue on that whole step journey. Stay on the 4th string. C, a whole step higher would be C, skip over C sharp, D. Okay, so hey, we've still gone an octave, but we've done it with whole steps. Just worked out that way for the 4th string. That's pretty nice. So let's keep going a whole step at a time. D, D sharp, E. Hey, everything repeats. There's an E again. If I skip F and go up 2 frets, that's F sharp. Go up 2 frets means I skip over G, G sharp. Skip over the A, that gives me A sharp, B, C. Then I have C again. So listen Now I have a whole tone passage. Which has a different sound than chromatically moving up through the notes. So we are skipping over notes. But what if I wanted to skip more than over? Maybe if I wanted to skip more than one note in the series, how would I express that? Well, you still use half steps and whole steps, which is an important concept when you're trying to figure out this basic theory jazz. Is how do I explain these movements? What if I wanted to go from the open fourth to the first fret? Well, I could tell somebody else I'm going a half step higher. D to D sharp. If I said, oh, I'm going to go from D to E, I could say I went a whole step above D. D, D sharp, E. What if I did something odd? What if I went from the fourth string open to the third fret? Wait a minute, that's an odd number there. That would be D, half step, whole step, half step. I could say that I've gone 3 half steps, or I could say I've gone 1 whole step and 1 half step combined. So 3 halves or 1 whole step and a half equals the same distance, right? So you could use either term. I would probably say I went a step and a half above a D. D to E is a whole step, then E to an F would be a half step, so it would be a step and a half. So when you hear this terminology, which is leading us up to scales, which is what we're going to talk about next, the distances between the notes are expressed as whole and or half steps, or sometimes a combination of both. But when you hear that terminology, half step, whole step, you'll know what we're talking about. So now you can continue to play whole tone passages on any string starting at any fret anywhere, but it's a good idea for practice purposes to get a handle on what this is doing, is to play it on each of the strings individually. So if I wanted to play a whole tone passage on the third string, and we're running short on time again, I would have D, I'm sorry, G, we're on the third string, duh. Let's get it right from the beginning. On the third string, G, a whole step would be A, a whole step would be B, a whole step from there would be C sharp, a whole step from there would be D sharp, a whole step from there would be F, then a whole step G, A, then up from A you'd have B, right? And you get the point. You're doing the same thing on the third string that you did on the fourth string, but you're just starting on a different note. And again, if any of the notes you land on happen to be sharps, if you reverse those whole tone passages and went lower in pitch, you could call those same notes flats. You technically wouldn't be wrong if you're just talking about individual notes and you're trying to explain to somebody what notes you're playing. If you called, if you called E flat a D sharp note, it's really the same thing. But if you're playing in a key, a certain key, then they would tend to identify the sharps and flats with the key that you're playing in, which is something we're going to talk about next. But that would be another way to move around through the 12 notes that we understand, would be to move whole step at a time instead of half step, or a combination of both. So let's say I wanted to play on the first string, which has the same notes as the fourth, but I'm going to use this as an example. I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit. D to D sharp is a half step. Now from there I'm going to go a whole step, which would be E, F. From F I'm going to go a whole step to F sharp. Now I'm going to go 2 whole steps higher. F sharp, G sharp, right? A sharp. So you see what's happening there? I could explain to you, or you could explain to someone else how you're moving around through the notes by saying half step, whole step. Oh, I went 3 whole steps, or I went 2 half steps. You know, you can pick and choose half or whole and mix the terms together, but it's basically just trying to relate to somebody else with the terminology that we all understand how you're moving through the 12 notes. So practice that and see if you can absorb that. In the next video, what we're going to do is try to classify what a scale looks like, based on those terms, half step and whole step. See you next time. Thanks.